I'd like to welcome everyone this afternoon and most especially to our Filipino brethren. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. To all our Southeast Asian neighbors and to anyone and everyone who are with us now and maybe in different parts of the world. Mabuhay po kayong lahat and maligayang pagdating po dito sa aming webinar. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Jack Garcia, and I am a trustee of the Philippines Heritage Conservation Society, who is a founding member of the Southeast Asian Cultural Heritage Alliance, also known as SEACHA. And I'm very privileged to welcome you today to this 22nd edition of Chat Time. Wow, we've actually come a long way, and just to give you an overview, SEACHA was conceived about a few months before the pandemic, and a lot of the sessions we organized actually happened during that most challenging of times. But now it's more or less us going out of the pandemic, and we're now already in this 22nd edition. Today's session is actually a 100% Filipino webinar, so to speak, the content of which, as well as our speaker and moderator, are homegrown. So it gives me pleasure to actually be the host for this edition. And we've been actually busy the past month. May was National Heritage Month, and it's always been celebrated as such every year. HCS has been privileged to be part of that celebration, and we, in partnership with SEACHA, actually had a cultural heritage management clinic during the last weekend of May, which was held in San Carlos, Pangasinan. So what happened during the clinic was that there were about 20 youth and local mappers who all participated in a workshop. This workshop was billed as a comprehensive cultural mapping towards a democratic management of change. Well, they heard from people who are authorities in their own field. First of all, we had the current chairperson of SEACHA and president of the Indonesian Heritage Trust, Dr. Katrini Kubuntubu, who was there to provide knowledge and inputs. We also had one of SEACHA's advisors in the person of Dr. Johannes Widodo, who is the Director for Graduate Programs in Architecture Conservation at the National University of Singapore. We also had someone who works on the ground and someone I would actually call a real heritage community champion. She founded Heritage Hero in the model heritage city of Shak in Indonesia, and her name is Miss Cindy Sandoval. These 20 youth actually explored San Carlos, and they analyzed the significance of the city's cultural components. They built consensus and eventually drafted an action plan, which was going to be the start of a long collaboration, if only to restore and invigorate the cultural landscape of the city. We'd like to actually thank our co-organizers and local partners who made that activity a reality: the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, the National Committee on Monuments and Sites, and of course, the Youth for Pangasinan Heritage, the administration of the Virgen Milagrosa University Foundation, who was very, very much our hospitable hosts during that weekend, the local governments of San Carlos, and of course, the province of Pangasinan's Provincial Tourism and Cultural Affairs Office. Okay, I'm actually very pleased that today's discussion for this all-Filipino edition of Chat Time features traditional house restoration, and green tourism in the rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras, exploring the landscape for cooling alternatives. And today I'd like to actually introduce to you our moderator for this All Filipino edition. She is a lecturer at De La Salle University and St. Scholastica's College in Manila. Her research interests encompass heritage studies, indigenous communities, and intangible heritage. She has participated in a joint master's degree in dynamics of cultural landscapes and heritage management through an Erasmus Mundus scholarship grant. And this educational pursuit actually involved several universities and museums in Europe. And we at CICHA are also proud to have her as a youth alumni. She was part of the Youth Capacity Building Workshop for Cultural Heritage and Climate Advocacy. And she was also a speaker and moderator at the CICHA Conference on Cultural Wisdom for Climate Action, the Southeast Asian Contribution. And this was held just this year, last January in Bangkok. So as Philippine host and representative for the Heritage Conservation Society, please join me in giving a warm mabuhay welcome to today's moderator, our very own Miss Royce Liza Malabonga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jack Garcia, for the very warm mabuhay introduction. We'll be taking the floor to introduce our speaker, our wonderful speaker this afternoon. He is Mr. Raymond Aquino Macapagal. He is the Assistant Professor of the Center for International Studies at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Psychology, magna cum laude, and proceeded to teach at the UP Diliman Department of Psychology for several years. He then decided to shift careers and became a gastronome. He set off for Italy and finished his first master in food culture and communication at the University of Gastronomic Sciences in Polenzo. He then did the second master in World Heritage and Cultural Projects for Development at the University of Turin. He has, for the past decade or so, been working to help restore native houses and develop community-based tourism in the UNESCO World Heritage Batad Rice Terrace cluster in the Philippine Cordilleras. He is also a promising food writer, and his essays about indigenous food culture have been recognized by the premier food writing contest in the Philippines, the Doreen Gamboa Fernandez Food Writing Award. He won second prize in 2015, first prize in 2017, and third prize in 2022. He is currently a PhD Indigenous Studies student at the University of the Philippines in Baguio. This afternoon, his talk will revolve around traditional house restoration and green tourism in the rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras, exploring the landscape for cooling alternatives. After his talk, we will have a Q&A. Everyone, please join me in warmly welcoming Mr. Raymond Macapagal. Raymond, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Liza, and thank you, Jack, for the introduction and for starting this lecture. Let me share my screen. Okay, can it be seen? Okay, great. It looks as if it's okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this invitation to do a lecture with the Southeast Asian Cultural Heritage Alliance, no? And thank you for inviting me, Jeruni Kong Swasdi. And she was my classmate several years ago in a very interesting and very educational summer school in Thailand. So this afternoon, I'll be talking about a project that I've been doing for about 15 to 17 years, depending on certain factors. No, but these are traditional house restorations and linked with green tourism, no, in the rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras. So I'll be talking about my experience and current issues, no, looking for cooling alternatives to be in tune with the theme in the landscape. Okay, so okay. So how it all started. So I arrived as a tourist in a small village, no, in the province of Ifugao. I'll show you that in a bit, in 2005. And then I really enjoyed that very beautiful village. I'll show you what it looks like when you arrive. So what is very interesting about this village is that at least during that time, you had to hike, you know, about a couple of hours to get to the village, and you don't really see the terraces until the very end of the trail. And when you arrive at the end of the trail, it really just appears in front of you as if it's like a miracle, and then you instantly fall in love with the place. So I returned there in 2006 looking for a place to stay, and I said that I wanted to stay in a traditional house because traditional houses in the Philippines right now are kind of rare already. And for a tourist, it will be a very unique experience. So I was offered a renovation project in 2006, wherein my guide, his name is Pia Manod, said that, you know what, you really like the houses here, the traditional houses. We have one traditional house that's already dilapidated, damaged. If you want, you can help us restore it. And if it's restored, it'll be yours. We'll give it to you. And it's like, wow, it was kind of unbelievable. But yeah, everyone in the village now knows that, oh, that's Ray's house, that's where he lives, etc. So even though I have no claims of ownership, people there tell other people that it's my house. Okay, so after that restoration project, we celebrated it with a ritual in 2007, and eventually more and more funding came in. Previously, it was just personal funding, and then I was able to get some funding from the government and from my university. And then it eventually started increasing. And then it became my master's degree project in 2013 when I did a Master in World Heritage and Cultural Projects for Development at the University of Turin. No? So the pictures here show, the top picture show the first, my picture with the ritualists, the shamans or the Mumbai in 2007. Okay, there were still 5 of them. And then the bottom picture is from just this year. And that's the last one left. No, Apo Buya, he's the last shaman. Okay, so after a long hike from the highway, you arrive at this really beautiful village. This was taken by a professional photographer just last May. So we were about to just harvest. You can see it's very green and there are some patches of gold, and that means that the grains are about to ripen. Okay, and just for people who need a bit more geographical information, so this is the Philippines, and in the largest island, Luzon, sort of in the center, is called the Cordillera Administrative Region, no, which has 6 provinces, no, and we're going to focus on the province of Ifugao over here. Okay, and that is the location of all the rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras as inscribed on the World Heritage List, no, on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Although you will definitely see other rice terraces in this whole region, you know, from Apayao to Benguet, you will find rice terraces and even rice terraces outside of this region. But the UNESCO World Heritage sites, the representative sites, are all found in this province of Ifugao over here. Okay, so in this province, you have different terrace communities. This is from a UNESCO publication, but the ones shaded in like the dark gray are the 5 representative sites. So you have Nagakadan over here, this small area, and then the Hongduan cluster, it's one whole town. Okay, and then Central Mayuyao cluster over here, and the two smallest, no, are the ones that I visit a lot. No, so this is Bangaan, and then this is where I work in Batad. So it's probably the smallest representative site. However, it's also the most touristy, and probably I would say the most beautiful. Okay, but that's just my opinion. Okay, so the rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras is not just a typical World Heritage Site. It is considered one of the first cultural landscapes to be inscribed on the World Heritage List. No, and this is a statement from UNESCO in 1995. So we have to remember that this is a cultural landscape. It's not just about the rice terraces. It's also about everything, the community, the structures, the houses, no, and even the rituals. So if you look at all the UNESCO inscriptions in about the rice terraces, you also find other components of intangible cultural heritage, like the hudhud ritual chants and the punok tugging rituals, no, tugging games. So the picture on top of of this slide is harvest time. Now I think this was about in 2011. So harvest time is about May to June and July. So it's about harvest time right now. And then the bottom, this is from probably December or January. This is the time when they're starting to prepare the rice terraces to be planted. So they're filled with water. And they're very beautiful, especially when they reflect, when they're very still and they reflect the sun. Okay, so those are the rice terraces. Okay, I'd like to focus now on the Ifugao, Balue, Falue, or Fale. It depends on the pronunciation varies, no, because they have many different dialects in these areas. For example, my village of maybe about 1,000 people, they're only they have their own dialect there. Okay, so the Ifugao Balue or Balue is one of the gems of Philippine vernacular architecture. It's environmentally responsive, and it's also prefabricated architecture. So it's something that you prefabricate first, the different parts, and then you just assemble them. And it's the last remaining example of Cordillera architecture that's still in use. So you will find many different types of native houses, or traditional houses all throughout the Philippine Cordilleras, but most of them have already disappeared, no? And it's the Ifugao Fale or Balue that's still in use up until now, no? So, and this has influenced a lot of, Philippine architecture. For example, the picture at the bottom is the National Arts Center of the Philippines that's in Laguna, and it's also inspired by the pyramidal structure of the Ifugao Balue. Okay. Other things, this is a diagram of the Falue. You will see that there are 3 levels, no? The bottom level or the ground level is for daytime activities. No? So you can people do rice pounding and some large scale cooking here, and also hanging out, no? Because you can't really hang out in the middle of the house because it's only for cooking and sleeping. So if you look at this corner over here, the right-hand corner when you enter the house from the ladder, okay, that's the cooking hearth. So there's a wood-fired hearth there, and that's where you usually cook your meals, especially if it's not a very big meal. And then in the evenings, you also sleep in this area over here. Okay, and then the top level over here is for storing rice. Okay, so when you have the rice are stored in bundles, and they're usually stored at the very top of the house, so that the heat and the smoke from the hearth will dry and preserve it. Okay, and the house is made of various types of wood, no? And many parts have to be specially selected. For example, the preferred wood for the posts, no, for the bottom 4 posts is pine wood, because the pine wood is something that resists termites. So if you have to choose a particular type of pine wood with lots of resin in order to deter the termites from eating the wood, no? And then for the other parts of the house, the beams, the 5 main beams, they would use probably something like Neonuclea orientalis, which has a lot of sap, and it will again deter many of the insects from eating it. So all these different types of different parts of the house will need specific types of wood, and that intangible cultural wisdom for that is known only mainly to the traditional carpenters of this area. Okay, and another interesting thing about it is that it can be dismantled and reconstructed elsewhere. So if the family needs to move their house, or if they have to go somewhere, they can just dismantle it. Especially, for example, if the roof gets damaged too much and you have no way to repair it, the family would usually just opt to dismantle the house, keep it until such time as they can afford to build a new roof. Okay, so there. And beyond cooling the landscape, we talk about the roof. It's very important. It's made with grass, cogon grass, or Imperata cylindrica. Okay, and beyond just looking at how it looks about aesthetics, it also provides a constant temperature, which prevents mold growth on rice. Okay, and then it also provides, especially the part beside the hearth, it provides a warm temperature for the fermentation of certain important food items like rice wine and salted meat. Okay, and the problem here now is that since Imperata cylindrica grass is getting more and more rare due to problems caused probably by climate change, but also for varying, patterns of forest growth and agriculture, people have resorted to using GI sheets, or galvanized iron sheets. The problem here is that although it's more economical and it lasts longer, it really does not blend well with the cultural landscape. So first, it doesn't look very nice. That's one. But also functionally, it's very, very difficult to have a house with GI sheets because one, if it's raining, it becomes very noisy inside. You can't relax or sleep when it's raining. And then when it's hot, it becomes literally like an oven inside the house. So people stay outside of the house during daytime because it gets very, very hot. And this variation of temperature from day to night, is also something that will promote the growth of a lot of these molds, which will damage the rice. And then finally, when it's really cold, you will find that there's a lot of moisture that will form on the inner side of these GI sheets. Okay, so although the economic the GI sheets are economically more viable, it really is functionally impossible to preserve many of the aspects of the cultural landscapes when you have GI sheets. Okay, another problem with the rice terraces is because it's a World Heritage Site, it invited a lot of mass tourism, which brings congestion and urbanization. It also erodes indigenous traditions and does not adequately benefit the local rice terrace farmers. So the main impetus for my project is this common complaint of the rice farmers that I interact with. They'd usually say something like, why are all these tourists coming here and then they are enjoying the sites, but we don't benefit from them? It's like, we're the ones who are taking care of the rice terraces. Why aren't we getting more of the benefits? Because when you look at mass tourism in the Philippines, a lot of the value in the value chain for this mass tourism goes to outsiders. So you have, the van drivers or the tour operators, and the inn owners, no, who are extracting much of the value from the tourism value chain. And people just look at the rice terraces and nothing goes to the farmers, because they just look at the terraces, and they pay the inn owners, they pay their tour guide, they pay their driver, and they don't directly pay the rice terrace farmers any money. No, they can't even buy rice from the rice terrace farmers, because most of the time the rice that's planted in the terraces is not even enough, no, for the subsistence of the rice terrace farmers. So it's a very difficult predicament, but that is what inspired me to do my project with the people in Batad. One sec. Okay. Okay, so the current project aims to explore the ways by which intangible and tangible cultural heritage can be safeguarded while bringing about economic development to local communities. It also provides an alternative to the culture poor mass tourism that prevails in the rice terraces. So when you look at rice terrace mass tourism, it's just really about, taking pictures of the rice terraces, taking pictures of you in the rice terraces. And there's very, very little learning that happens. You don't get to learn about the culture. You don't get to support their culture. It's mainly just about you looking at these beautiful things while not being educated about the landscape, the cultural landscape. Okay, so the project also aims to develop sites for learning about indigenous culture. Okay, so the project objectives include carrying out adaptive restoration on 3 or more native houses using traditional techniques and employing master craftsmen and their apprentices. Okay, outfit the above mentioned houses with equipment and facilities for use as tourist lodging, and train the owner families to host guests, no, and to provide cultural experiences for visitors. One of the interesting things that I heard when talking about and exploring certain experiences, the farmers never really thought that people would be interested in pounding rice or threshing rice or planting. They thought it was just, like a normal activity. But I told them these things would be very interesting for visitors. So they just had to, get people to experience their daily life. And that's already something that, many cultural tourists will be willing to pay for. Okay. And then finally, something more, there are a lot of restoration initiatives, but very, very little have go beyond that and try to perform indigenous rituals related to the Ifugao house. Okay, and then the more recent objective that has to do with the theme of SICHA is to explore substitutes for materials that are getting harder to find, especially the cogon grass. Okay, so what have we seen here? Okay, so beyond 3, we were able to, because the many families were very interested in doing restorations, we were able to eventually adaptively restore 12 huts using traditional methods, and also counterpart work or labor from the owner families. No, so one of the first was this one. I think this was the first we restored. No, so this guy Donato Ugay is a craftsman. He moved to Manila when he was young, but then he wants to retire in Batad. Okay, so I told him, why don't you rebuild one of your old faluys? So he did that. He did exactly that, and he has a house with one of the nicest views of the terraces. Okay, this one is another house in a different village, no, that's just been dismantled, and there's not much damage, so it was much more easily restored. Okay, and this is the latest one that we did. This is what they call my house in the city of Balihong. Okay. And this was, I think, done in 2017. Okay. So when I say adaptively restore, we had to make certain changes, no, to the structures. For example, for it to be more attractive to tourists, we provided, windows, no, which peer out into the rice terraces. So here you can have a nice cup of coffee with this view of the terraces, no? And then the hearth, no? Like in some of the houses, you still have the hearth here, but it's not used very often. Okay, because tourists don't like dusty or sooty interiors. But you can see here that we put some beds on the ledges over here so that tourists can sleep on the sides of the house. Okay, and then since Donato Ugay is a very good craftsman, he would display a lot of his carvings and then sell it to the visitors. Okay, so these are traditional spoons and ladles. Okay, so what we saw was that owner families can earn extra cash from tourists. So these are tourists doing, typical activities. This is called munulut, which is threshing of the rice. So since the rice is stored in bundles on their stems, you still have to remove them before you pound. And then this is this is from 2022. We have an Italian visitor. He's more of a researcher, Tom, and he joined in the harvest in our terraces. And then this picture on the right, these are gastronomy students from my university, the University of Gastronomic Sciences, who did a study tour of the Philippines for 10 days. So they're here learning about Filipino rice culture. Okay. And then it was also a learning site for many students. So I would bring my students from the university to learn about cultural heritage, especially rice agriculture. No, so for example, this is the one on the left. You'll see we're sort of at a very high level of the terraces, and we're planting. So I think this was in January or February. So I had my students go and experience how to plant rice in the terraces. Okay. And then here below, you have me talking about the different types of attire and weaving in the Ifugao area, no? Because and we had the elders of the village do a dance performance with my students. And then here, the one with the house is a colleague of mine from the College of Architecture in UP Diliman. His name is Nicolo. He discussed, he had a little lecture with our students about the construction, the different parts of the Ifugao house. Okay. Other things, so here is one of the projects, a little model house built by a student of mine who's an architecture student in the university. So we exhibited this at the end of the semester. Okay, more students planting rice. And then I think this is, you can also find this in other parts of Southeast Asia. This is betel chewing, no? So it's called moma in the Philippines, in Ifugao. So I had my students try chewing betel or moma with one of our guides. This is Sandy Magoy. So this project became very important learning sites for many students who did study tours, to learn about Philippine indigenous cultural heritage, especially of the Ifugao area. Okay, and then what I think is a unique aspect of our project is the performance of rituals and the importance of community. So in many of my restorations, we hold rituals when the house is completed. So the ritual calls for the participation or the lead, the prayers from the Mumbai or the shaman. So here, this was in 2017. There were only 2 left. Okay. And then I think this was 2016. There were still 3 of them. Okay. And then this is the last one in 2023. And there was just 1 shaman left, no, the ritual specialist. And if you can look closer, pardon the gore, but these are 3 pigs that have been chopped up. No, some of it will be cooked for feeding the community, so the community is invited, and then the rest will be chopped up and then sent home with the people who joined. No, it's called the guana, which is something that a piece of meat that you can take home to your family after the celebration. So there really is a very, very strong sense of community that is emphasized in our projects. Okay, now let's look at some photographs that I have. I'll just talk to you a bit about the house building process, and then I'll be showing some videos to make it more interesting. Okay, so this is the site of my house. It's called Sitio Balihong in Batad. Okay, so after putting up the lower beams, we put the lower posts, the 4 posts. We put some beams, the main lower beams that are 3. Okay, there are 3 of them. And then we have to put in the upper posts. And then once they're installed, this is what stabilizes the structure, the 4 upper posts, no? Or the pagad, we call them. And then we put the upper beams or liub. Okay. And then we have the beams of the attic granary. No? So this is where you will put the rice. And then we put the king post. No? So this is sort of a rice guardian. We call it the bulul. Okay. And we put the main roof beams, the other roof beams. Oops, sorry. And this is a long shot with most of the roof beams installed. Okay, we temporarily brace the structure and install the cane shell. This is the part of the roof where all the bundles of grass will be attached later. Okay, so it has to usually be group work. No, this can't be done just alone. You have to have several people work together to install the cane shell. Okay, and then that is where we start putting the kogon or the Imperata cylindrica bundles on the roof. They put it on the sides, on the edges first, no, or the bulud. Okay, the edges are done first. These are about 8 layers. Okay, and it's tied with rattan strips. No, so this is one. This is how they install it. Again, it has to be in groups. It can't be done just by one person. It has to be very cooperative. Okay, so there, more pictures, and then after about 2,000 bundles have been attached, you have a complete roof structure with a very large viewing window. Okay, so a view from below. This is where the beds will be put eventually. Okay, and this is just a really interesting photo of the interior. Okay, so I will show some video clips in a bit. So let's start first with something that okay. So here, this is a video from 2017. so that's the first one. And then I have another one to show you. This was from 2017. And then the most recent one is, just a sec. Oops, new share. New share. This was done just a month ago.
Hi, Raymond. We can't see the video.
The second video was supposed to just be another more recent video of the ritual. So there, I think you've seen some of it anyway. But finally, we look at a topic that has a bit more to do with the theme of Sicha right now, which is the postscript to a warming future. Okay, so the problem with Kogon now, or the Imperata cylindrica grass, is that because of climate change, for the plant growing patterns in the mountains have changed, no? So instead of seeing more areas planted to grass or with just wild grass growing, they're being taken over by forests, no, different types of trees, because in many cases, this grass has to be sort of cultivated, no? So if you want to have fields or plantations of this grass, someone has to look after it and prevent the other plants from growing so that more of the kogon will grow. And that is not something that people are doing now. The other thing is many of the areas in the mountains are now being cleared for cash crop agriculture. So even one of the biggest issues now in the rice terraces is that they're no longer rice terraces. They're now vegetable terraces because farmers, because they need cash, no? And rice is not something that they can sell that cheaply. Okay, they will just plant tomatoes or beans or potatoes or squash, no? So that is one of the reasons why there's a shortage of the materials needed to build the house. So one of the things that we are looking at is called pawid, no? Pawid is a roofing material, no, made with the fronds of a marshland palm called Nipa fruticans. No, so this is something found not very near to the rice terraces, but near enough, no, in the coastal regions, and it's traditionally used in lowland houses, no, for roofing. The problem is that the application of these pawid is very thin, and if you look at the traditional Ifugao Faluy, it has to be very thick, no, for insulation against the heat, against the cold. Okay, so our current proposals to the people in the rice terraces is that, can we try using pawid instead of the kogon? And they're not, I think, so to speak, they need to warm up to the idea still. but we're thinking of experimenting with using GI sheets plus the pawid in order to be more protective, or for it to last longer, because pawid doesn't last long. But if you put it on top of the GI sheet, then probably it will insulate better and it will cool the houses inside during the daytime, definitely. So it is something that we're trying to experiment on, but we still need to find willing volunteers in the communities for this. Okay. So finally, we have, some policy suggestions. One is to emphasize in many of our programs how the tangible and intangible cultural heritage are intertwined, especially in cultural landscapes. No, so one of the issues with programs, to help safeguard the rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras, they're mostly just oriented toward the rice terraces, no? But they don't really look at other aspects of the cultural landscape, like, for example, the vernacular architecture, no? Or many of the other intangible cultural heritage that's very important in supporting or safeguarding the whole cultural landscape, no? So there has to be more multidimensional approaches in safeguarding heritage, especially in cultural landscapes, no? Okay. Also, there is a need to analyze tourism value chains, no, and ensure greater benefits for local and indigenous people. So you have to see, wait a minute, how much money is the tour operator extracting, and why is he or she not giving more of the tourist money to the local people? Okay. And also, I think, as compared to mass tourism, there has to be some sort of preference, no? Especially in marginal areas where it's very difficult to bring supplies and everything, to do high value but small footprint tourism, no? Especially in places that are very remote. Okay. And for material supply problems, we can probably seek low technology solutions from surrounding areas. So for example, if you're lacking cogon grass in the mountain areas, maybe we can look for solutions in the nearby seaside areas, no? Because a lot of them also use natural materials for roofing. And it seems like in many areas of the Philippines, there's actually an oversupply of palm planting materials like pawid, no? So we're seeing, for example, in certain islands, people have to cut down certain palms because no one is using them. So there's actually an oversupply. That is something that we can take advantage of if we're going to try and find solutions for the roofing problem in traditional houses in Ifugao. So there, thank you very much for listening. And I'm ready to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Raymond, for a very insightful presentation, and also for sharing about your house restoration project in Ifugao. So now there are questions from the participants. For the first question, he or she wanted to ask, can we know the range of the sizes, as well as how many people or families normally stay in each house traditionally before the onset of tourism?
Okay, so there are different sizes, no? So in Batad, I think the largest is 10 by 10, or maybe like it's actually not square, they're rectangles, so it's maybe like 10 by 10.5 feet. Okay. So, but that's in Batad. Okay, in Mayuyao, the neighboring area, they're even larger, maybe 15 to 20 feet. So it really depends on the wood that's available. Okay, and each house can only host one family. It's usually a single family in each house because there's only one room. Actually, they had a different living arrangement before. So typically, when a family starts, no, they stay in the house, just the mother, the newlyweds, and then they have children, right? When their children grow up to become maybe pre-puberty, maybe 8, 9, 10, 11, they move out of the house and they move into dormitories. They're sort of like dormitories. That this is where all the males of the village will stay. This is all where all the women, the young girls of the village will stay, and they have to sleep. They sleep there together, no, so that the houses will be decongested. And in these dormitories, no, ulog is what they call it and also dapay in other areas, no. This is where the young people learn, the different lessons, life lessons that are needed to become a successful adult, no. So their coming of age happens in these dormitories, no. So that's traditionally. But now, of course, no, there are none of these anymore because people have built, the typical modern house, and the children don't need to move out of the house. Okay, so there.
Okay, it's very interesting to find out. Another, I think this is a suggestion from one of the participants. They said that instead of GI sheet, how about multiple layers of cane shell before the thatching? He or she said that they don't think that maybe metal sheets are a good and sustainable solution. What do you think about that?
Multiple layers of the cane shells. I'm not really sure what putting more layers will add of the cane shell. It seems to be, I don't know, maybe a bit I don't see the function of putting more cane shells because I think the cane shell will even be more expensive compared to the cogon roof. So yeah, maybe we can think about that, but I've never thought about that. But if there's a particular better reason for putting more cane shells, then I'd like to hear that. GI sheets, yeah, I also agree that they're not a good and sustainable solution, but it's the preferred solution because it's easy to install, it lasts long, etc. But they just really have to move out of their houses, in the daytime. And they'll have to deal with the noise of the rain and the dripping moisture when it's really, really cold. So yeah, they're still trying to make do. But yeah, in many cases, people prefer to have cogon roofs, but it's unless you really have a sponsor, because it's very expensive to put one, then to install one, then you have no choice for the most part.
All right. Okay. So you have another question. This is in Filipino, but I will translate this in English. Do we have regulations that can protect intangible cultural heritage in CAR, the Cordillera Administrative Region? And do we have documented processes on how to build the Falui and other heritage houses in CAR?
Okay, I'm not sure about the regulations that protect. It's really not regulations, but more programs. So people, a lot of people try and hold rituals as much as possible. There's also this what do you call it? Like phenomenon of the festivalization of many rituals.
True.
So there, and then there are lots of, I have the documentation on how to build a balui, but I think even more so than documentation, I think there has to be better support or training related to actually doing these houses. So if you have house artisans, traditional Falui artisans, native house artisans, then support them by giving them work, and that's something we're seeing in the lowlands too. So in a very popular tourist site called Tagaytay, in just south of Manila, where there are a lot of the cogon grass, no? You can find a lot of the cogon grass, but if it's of a different quality, you have many of the Ifugao people migrating there so that they can build furniture and even faluys, no, or traditional houses for the lowlanders who have put up resorts or vacation houses there. Okay. So yun.
Right. Thank you, Raymond, for the clarification. I think Jack would like to share something. He said that he has few concerns regarding green tourism. Jack? Jack, would you like to share your perspective?
You're on mute. Nakamute ka pa, Jack.
Jack, please unmute
Yeah.
yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate, Raymond, the fact that you mentioned something about the inequitable relationship that exists between tourism and the host community in Batad. Okay, so it's a very legitimate concern. There's always this negative socio-cultural impacts that always arise when visitors are not exactly prepared or briefed or made aware of what they can possibly expect when they visit a certain place, which can be a source of irritant between the visitors and the hosts. No, so is there such a thing as a mechanism by which visitor management policies can be introduced? Like, for example, have they been able to find out exactly the exact carrying capacity of the place? What kind of people they'd like to have in terms of visitor profiles? Your talk actually raises a lot of opportunities. I see opportunities for volunteerism. I see opportunities for those who are genuinely interested in culture and would really like to immerse themselves in the place. I have a friend who was a tour guide before, and he always shared with me how he actually brought a lot of European tourists, especially a lot of French, to Batad. And I always ask him, how long do they stay in Batad? I mean, are they ever housed in Batad? Because I don't even know whether they have adequate facilities to house these groups while staying overnight or something. No, so that's one thing. No, I'm a tourism professional, and I'd like to see a more equitable way by which the host community actually gets to get the most benefits out of tourism. But I also see that there is a challenge, especially in terms of preparing them specifically with regards to hospitality resources, training them how to receive visitors. I remember we went to Agusan Marsh one time, and we had a Manobo group who was just too eager to welcome tourists. But we thought that there was a lot that they needed to be prepared for in terms of how best to receive visitors. So my question is there a mechanism for visitor management practices to be placed before people can visit Batad? And how much tourists at any number of time can they possibly accommodate? And which times of the year is best for visits, such that people who would go do not just go and look and then leave, but actually go, stay, and actually immerse in the culture of the community itself. Like, for example, maybe they can actually do rice planting, they can actually build houses. So, and there are a lot of people who would actually like to do that unique experience. So a lot of people these days are looking for authenticity, for integrity of the experience. So what better way to actually achieve that than actually be one of the host communities doing what they actually do.
Okay. Oh wow, those are really those are several questions that you posed, no? So first, carrying capacity, um, I would say 100 or 200 tourists can be welcome there. But you know, one of the issues with capacity with tourism numbers in Batad, maybe if you look at there's oh God, can I say this publicly? But you know, there's a bit of a competition, no? You know, the center periphery competition, because
Mm.
Banaue, the town center, is the one that was established earlier, so they have lots of hotels and inns there. And then Batad is relatively new, but you know, you have many new inns that are being built there. And I think they're kind of well trained already. So the Department of Tourism has a pool of trained guides there who can talk to tourists and orient them properly. And generally, the foreign tourists are much more well behaved compared to the local tourists who I've heard complained a lot about the hiking. Like, why do we need to walk here? Or why does it take so long to get here, you know? So yun nga, parang very interesting because like they actually prefer the foreign tourists because they can hike anywhere, and Filipinos always complain about, you know. But there, so yeah, so there's this bit of competition, such that, you know, especially when if you look at, you know, Banaue, and you see how when the tourists arrive, many of them are encouraged to stay in Banaue, and then people will just say, but that is only a day tour, you know. You don't need to stay there. If you just stay here in Banaue, make it your, you know, like your
Jump off
base.
point.
Yeah, drop your like your takeoff point or your base to explore other places. And then but that is only a day trip. But you can actually, it's not just there's so many things to in Batad. For the most part, you can go there all year round, no? Even though the terraces have, for example, in maybe August, September, and October, the terraces don't look very pretty because it's all just grass. There's no rice anymore, and it's kind of brown. But we have a waterfall there, a beautiful waterfall, and you can go hiking in there are places you can hike to with really nice views of the terraces and lots of different forests. So if you want to plant, you can go there in the early part of the year, January, February. If you want to harvest, it's right now, May, June, July. If you want to see like pools filled with water that look like mirrors of the sky, mirroring the sky, reflecting the sky, that's about October to December. So you can really go there all the time. And I think in many cases, the accommodations there and also the hospitality is very, you know, it's very good already. No, it's very good. It's very convenient. They even have, you know, if you want a hot shower, they have hot showers there already. So yeah. But with the houses, with the traditional houses, it's a bit less up to standard because, you know, they look very different from typical accommodations.
I think it takes a
I hope I
certain.
answered most of the questions.
Oh, yes, you did. I think it takes a certain kind of traveler profile who will really be able to appreciate really staying and immersing themselves in the community itself.
Yes,
So
that's true.
I don't know, where does the regulation happen? In Banaue? In Batad? Who do we talk to? I mean,
Yeah.
as someone who's been there on the ground for quite some time.
Yes. I think like Batad will welcome anyone. It's just that a lot of people are not as informed about it. Like I've seen one of the biggest issues now there, the really funny issues is that there are so many tourists, of course they're Filipino, who complain, who say like, I thought that, you know, the Batad is just on the side of the road. Why do I didn't know that you had to hike 30 minutes to get to Batad. So these are actually very preposterous complaints, no? But yeah, it's really it's because you're not properly informed, or you just didn't do enough research about it, you know. But yeah, I'm really not sure, like with Banaue there, yeah, as I told you, there's some sort of competition, you know. So I've tried as much as possible to avoid competing, no, head on with the people in Banaue, because you know they also have their, you know, livelihood that they're trying to protect. But yeah, it would be nice to discuss with you how we can work this out. But yeah, but the people in Batad have already found ways to directly look for clients, no? So they're already on booking.com or Agoda, or you know, they have their contacts, the French people. So for example, who is that? There's a French guy who goes there. His name is Olivier. Like, so everyone knows him. And he brings all the French tourists there.
Raymond,
Yes.
just to shift the conversation a little bit to climate change,
Okay.
what do you think are the factors that actually contribute to the endangerment of natural materials that are used in restoring the falues?
I think it all boils down to economics, eh. It's that because there is supply of kogon. You can find kogon in the lowland areas of the same province, no? But it's so expensive. Okay? And the quality is different. So they're saying that the kogon grass that grows in the high levels, they're shorter, but they're more sturdy. The ones that are in the lowland, they're longer, but they're more delicate. So that's one aspect of it. But you know, it really my last restoration of the falui cost me something like maybe what, 200,000 pesos or 100,000 baht just to restore that. And I think it's going to be much more expensive now. So we really have to, it has to be a concerted effort, you know, like counterpart from the families, because the families have wood lots. They can look for the wood. You don't have to buy the wood. They can provide labor from their members, etc., so that you don't have to pay for the labor, but it will still eventually come out quite expensive. So it's mainly a matter of economics. So there is a supply, I would say, but it's very, very expensive, especially with kogon. And it looks like pawid might be cheaper and easier to install. So there.
I have another question. How are the young Ifugao people involved in the project? And this is my personal question. I'm curious how the Ifugao youth actually perceive their own tangible and intangible cultural heritage. Because in different parts of the world, there are a number of young people who are not that interested anymore towards their own cultural heritage because they would rather move to more urbanized cities. Is it also a similar trend in Batad?
I think there's a lot of that. You'll find especially for example in Batad, which was able to get an internet signal. So when did they have that? Maybe 2021, if I'm not mistaken. That's when they first had internet. So you'll really see a change in the culture, no? But in Batad, what I found is that there is they really see how their culture can be used for their benefit. You know, so you will find, for example, that people, the children and the elderly are alike, are very, very willing to do cultural performances because they know that they will economically gain from it. So there's already like, okay, we need a cultural performance. Can you perform for us? And then it's not just something like where they're performing for the entertainment of the tourists, because they themselves are also entertained, you know, because they have the tourists dance with them. So, and then, you know, they kind of they kind of get entertained by seeing how the tourists try to dance their traditional dances. So it's really, at least for Batad, which is a very touristy village, no, they do know that culture can be used for their benefit. So there's a lot of interest in the traditional culture, you know, especially, however, you know, when it comes to things like architecture, you know, it's a different story, because they can't just, you know, they can't just live in the traditional house anymore. So what is happening here is that a family will still try to preserve their traditional house, but they will build a modern house beside it. And the traditional house, from being living quarters, will be just converted into a kitchen, because you really still need to cook in the wood hearth. You still need to ferment your rice wine. It needs that sort of environment, etc. So if you can afford it, or if you still have enough space, you don't really need to 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 destroy, you know, or to dismantle your old house. But definitely people will have to build modern houses beside them.
Mhm. Just picking out another question from the participants. How long can the traditional house last, and how many times must it be renovated?
Okay, yeah, actually, it's the most important factors in preserving a traditional house is having a fire always in the house, and the grass roof, because the grass roof or the roofing is what protects all the parts of the house. If that roof gets destroyed, then little by little, the different parts of the house will rot, and then you'll have to destroy it, no, or it will fall down. Okay, so I've seen houses that that have lasted for, you know, like 80 to 100 years in certain parts of Ifugao. In the house beside mine in Batad apparently was from the Spanish time. So I don't really have a way to verify, but the local story is that this was something that had already existed towards the end of the Spanish dominion of the Philippines.
All right. Thank you so much, Raymond. I believe that that would be the last question from the participants. And I would also like to take this opportunity to extend our gratitude to Raymond for sharing his expertise, and also to Mr. Jack Garcia. Thank you very much. I believe that the audiences are very, very interested, perhaps in visiting Batad, and also being able to participate in the restoration projects, and also hopefully visiting the Philippines, the rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras. We would also like to invite the audiences, just in case you might have projects, or you might have lectures that are related to the topic of Sicha, cooling the earth with cultural wisdom. We are very much open to hosting your lectures here. It's going to be a year-long activity, so please feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much to the Siam Society. Again, thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Mr. Jack Garcia. So thank you, everybody. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of the weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.